That dial is tiny, tidy, and oddly confident. And at some point, most people have stared at it and thought, what am I actually turning here? Same bread, same number, same morning. The first batch comes out golden. The second batch pops up sooner. And sometimes it is darker, or worse. It carries that faint burnt edge of a smell that ruins the whole room. It feels like there is no rule at all, like the knob is there for decoration, which is exactly why this is worth knowing. How does a toaster know when to stop? It has no eyes for color, no nose for aroma, and in most everyday designs, it is not counting neat minutes like a microwave. It does something simpler. It responds to temperature. Let's break it down right here. Because once you understand the trick, that pop stops meaning time is up and starts meaning a physical decision has just happened. A toaster does not heat bread like a microwave. The elements mainly throw infrared heat at the surface, like a small heat lamp. That detail matters because the surface is where toast becomes toast. The middle can stay soft. The outside is where the change happens. If you want a quick mental picture, think of sunlight through a window. On a cool day, you can stand in a sunbeam and feel your skin warm, even if the air around you is still chilly. That is radiation. A toaster is doing the same thing, just closer and hotter, on both sides at once. And the outside begins wet. Before bread can brown, it has to dry. Early in the cycle, moisture inside the slice migrates to the surface and evaporates. That evaporation costs energy. It is why the first stretch feels slow. As long as water is still escaping, it holds the surface back. The bread looks pale not because nothing is happening, but because the heat is busy turning liquid water into vapor. Compare a wet spoon and a dry spoon near a warm stovetop. The wet one seems to refuse to heat up because evaporation keeps stealing energy. Bread behaves like the wet spoon at first. It has to pay the moisture bill before it can spend heat on browning. Then, once the surface is dry enough, the rhythm changes. Without evaporation dragging it down, the surface temperature rises faster. Browning accelerates. The smell gets richer. The color deepens. It can feel like the toaster only just started working, even though it has been working the whole time. So, in simple terms, the toaster pushes bread through two stages. Moisture out first, browning second. Now the hardest question, how does it know the toast is done? Inside, the bread is held down by a latch. That latch is often held in place by an electromagnet while current is flowing. As long as the circuit stays powered, the magnet keeps its grip. When the power is cut, the magnet cannot hold on. The latch releases. A spring lifts the carriage. Pop. If you have ever had a retractable pen click in and out, the logic is similar. One part holds tension in place, and one small change makes it let go. In a toaster, the spring is always eager to lift the carriage. The latch and electromagnet are the only things saying, not yet. When power drops, it is like removing your finger from a door catch. Nothing else needs to happen. The stored force does the work. So the pop is not just a sound, it is a release. It is the moment the holding force disappears, and the spring takes over, which leads to the key question. What cuts the power? In many common pop-up toasters, it is a heat-sensitive control mechanism that changes with temperature. A classic approach uses a bimetal element, two bonded metals that expand differently when warmed. As the toaster heats up, the bimetal bends. Heat becomes movement. Movement becomes switching. When it bends far enough, it reaches a trigger point and trips the shutoff. Click. Current stops. The magnet loses its grip. The spring wins. Pop. That is the tiny temperature trick behind the toaster knowing. It is not grading your toast by color. It is hitting a thermal threshold. And the mechanism does the rest. So what about the dial? Contrary to popular belief, those numbers usually are not strict minutes. They are closer to a heat target translated into something easy to use. In many designs, the dial changes how far the mechanism has to move before it trips, or how much heat the system tolerates before it releases. It helps to picture it as distance, not time. Turn the dial up, and you move the trip point further away. The bimetal has to bend more. That means the toaster allows more heating before it gives up. You are not directly asking for more time. You are asking for more heat before stop. Time is just the side effect. It is how long it takes to reach that trigger. And that is why the same number can produce different results. Bread is not a standard input. Thick slices hold more water. Dense loaves release moisture differently. Sweet bread can brown faster because sugars speed up surface reactions. Frozen bread spends energy warming up and thawing before browning can really sprint. Same dial, different physics. Here is the frozen example in plain terms. A room temperature slice spends the early phase drying. A frozen slice first spends energy just getting back to not frozen, and it often releases extra moisture near the surface as it warms. So it can stay pale for longer, then brown quickly once the surface finally dries. That is why frozen toast can feel like it goes from nothing to too much in a short window. Now back to the betrayal that started this. Batch 2. After the first run, the toaster body is warmer. The air inside is warmer. The control mechanism starts closer to its trigger point. The bread also moves through the moisture phase faster because the environment is already hot, so the same setting can reach the shutoff point sooner. And browning can overshoot more easily. Same dial, warmer system, different outcome. There is a second reason this happens. Once the toaster is warmed up, more than just the elements are radiating heat. The surrounding metal has stored energy and starts helping to heat the bread too. It is subtle, but it nudges the surface along. And here is the part that confuses people. Sometimes the second batch pops sooner yet looks darker. That can happen because total time is not the whole story. If a warm toaster helps the bread get through the drying stage faster, a larger fraction of the cycle happens in the browning stage. And browning is where color deepens quickly. Shorter time can still mean more browning. If more of that time is spent on the part that actually browns, modern toasters can reduce this weakness. Some compensate for their own temperature, so repeated batches land closer to the same result. Some go further and use sensors to monitor browning more directly, recognizing color rather than relying only on preset heat behavior. But the principle stays the same. The more the toaster can measure, the less it has to guess. Basic toasters still have to gamble a little. They make a decision using heat as the signal and a physical threshold as the rule. So next time you press the lever and hear that click, remember what is happening in the box. Moisture escapes. Steam steals energy. The surface dries. Browning accelerates. A heat-sensitive element bends toward its trigger. Then the holding force drops out, and the spring lifts the toast with that tidy pop. That is not a clock finishing. It is a thermal threshold being reached. And once you notice that, you start seeing the toaster differently. Not as a timer you control, but as a small thermal system doing its best with imperfect information, turning heat into a decision, and a decision into breakfast. Thank you for watching.